Welcome, everyone. We'll get started. Can everyone hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if yes. Okay, good. Um, I'm Shannon Dawdy. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Anthropology at University of Chicago. I'm also co-director of 3CT, which if you don't know it, stands for the Chicago Center for Contemporary Theory. And this is our inaugural session of a new series we just launched, and this is coming under a long-standing initiative that Bill Brown and I have been working on for years called Object Cultures, which is just simply considerations of thing theory and material culture within the context of vanguards of contemporary theory, critical theory, etc. And what I hope to do in this series was to take what all of us are exhausted by, or take what's fast becoming a negative, which is Zoom life, and to really take advantage of the positives it provides, which is to shrink space and to connect people over thousands of miles. And so I have focused on inviting people who otherwise are very long ways away, and to hopefully create new audiences to bridge disciplines of different people, anthropologists, historians, archaeologists, people who share an interest in material culture, and also to reach more general audiences through this format by making things open. I also, another ambition of this series is a continual concern of mine to try to make academic engagement more dialogic and more animated. Maybe I'm just a bad listener. I have a hard time with sitting in a seat, sitting still, and having people monologue at me, and Zoom makes it even worse. So I also just wanted to have conversations with interesting people, and so we're going to try to keep this conversational. So before I introduce Jeremy, I also just want to mention our other two events in this series. On Friday, April 30th, also at noon, Paul Graves Brown will be speaking on pop archaeology in London. And I'm a big Bowie fan, and one of the things he'll be talking about are shrines to Bowie that can be found all over London. And then another friend, Alice von Bieberstein, who will be talking, the title is Treasure Hunting and Necrospeculation in Turkey. And she does really interesting work in the former Armenian portion of Turkey. Did I say that's on May 28th? So mark your calendars, and feel free to reach out to Anna Searle Jones, who just put some information in the chat if you would like to be put on the general 3CT membership list. So let me introduce my friend Jeremy. So Jeremy received his doctorate from our department in anthropology in 2009. He is a cultural anthropologist in training, but also, I think, a consummate anthropologist. Jeremy, I hope I'm not revealing too much, but one of the lovely things about Jeremy is he keeps a personal list of people who, if you're lucky enough to be on that list, you get these personal postcards every once in a while that are philosophical reflections of where he's at, where we're at, from a particular space and time, and they're quite lovely letters. They're really letters in epistolary fashion, which, and if you get them, you appreciate how much more that does than social media posts. So, I knew that Jeremy would be a good conversationalist, so I'm very grateful. Thank you, Jeremy, for agreeing to be my guinea pig. Jeremy's first book, based on his dissertation, is called Muslim Civil Society and the Politics of Religious Freedom in Turkey, and it was published by Oxford in 2017, I believe, right? Yeah. And it's an ethnography of Muslim NGOs, state institutions, and secularism in contemporary Turkey. He's also a co-editor of the very important volume that some of you may know called Anthropology and Global Counterinsurgency. He's published and co-edited many other things I don't have time to mention. He's also held several distinguished research and teaching fellowships, both in the United States and in Europe. He's currently a research leader at the Max Planck Institute for the Study of Religious and Ethnic Diversity in Göttingen, I'm trying to get my pronunciation right, Germany, where he heads the collaborative group studying empires of memory, Institute for the Study of Religious and Ethnic Diversity, though today he's beaming into us from his home in Zagreb, Croatia, where he will be leading a related multi-sided project on imperial revivalism. I hope I didn't get that wrong. I shrunk your title into 2 words right there. So these themes underscore Jeremy's recent research move into studies of memory, amnesia, and the remains of the Habsburg and Ottoman empires. His deepening interest in temporality and materiality is reflected in the work in progress we will be discussing today on the contested times of the Hagia Sophia or the Hagia Sophia. And so I'm going to start with some questions with Jeremy in just a second, but I just wanted to say we're going to try to transition to an open Q&A by 12:40 is the aim. And if you have questions, please use the raise hand function for Zoom, and also introduce yourself in the chat. Your names are pretty much clear on the Zoom, but maybe your affiliation, just so we know where you're coming from, although there are many friends in the audience I see. So help me welcome Jeremy. Thank you for doing this, Jeremy. And I wondered if we could get started however you like, but I know it would be helpful for a lot of folks to kind of get a quick tour of the site and the recent controversy that it sparked.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Forgive me if I sound a little bit hoarse. I've been battling allergies here in Zagreb. First, let me thank you again. You've embarrassed me with your generosity in your introduction. And it's so touching to know that some of these words I send out in these epistolary communications are appreciated. So thank you for that. Thank you also to Anna, Carlo, and we for the help with everything. And it's really a great pleasure and privilege to be the inaugural guinea pig for the Things in Theory conversation series. So I'll try to be as brief and concise as possible, since I do want to hear from the audience and really have a lively discussion, as you said. Of course, I can already see in the participant window that there are many friends, colleagues, some of whom are, of course, more thoroughly adept and indeed experts on Hagia Sophia, Hagia Sophia than I am, whereas others of you may not know much about the current controversy and history of the building at all. So I'll try to modulate among those different needs. I should say as a caveat that I'm not a scholar of Hagia Sophia specifically. As you said, of course, my research really was based in Istanbul for many years, leading to this first book. And now I have this multi-sited, multi-medium sort of project in post-imperial materiality, sites of memory, in that Pierre Nora sense. And of course, when you engage in something like that, Hagia Sophia becomes really quite important as this site of both the Byzantine and Ottoman empire that persists in the moment today, that of course is a World Heritage Site, and most importantly, as I think most, if not all of you probably know, was recently reconverted into a mosque on July 24th of last year. This came after years of speculation that Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his AK Party, the Adalet ve the Justice and Development Party in Turkey, would engage in this reconversion of the site as part of their sort of muscular sort of new Islamist political movement in Turkey. There's a long genealogy to this desire to reconvert Hagia Sophia, going back to the very moment when it was initially converted from a mosque to a museum after the end of the Ottoman Empire in the 1930s. So it was in 1934 that Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the founding father of the Turkish, modern Turkish nation state, opted to authorize that transformation from mosque to museum. Previously, at the not the very beginning of the Ottoman Empire, but the very beginning of Istanbul's history as the capital of the Empire in 1453, when it was conquered by Mehmet Fatih. Fatih means, of course, conqueror. One of his first acts was to convert the great cathedral of the Eastern Roman Byzantine Empire into a mosque. This, of course, intervened on its almost 1,000-year, millennium-long history as a church. Most of that time it was what we would now think of as an Orthodox church, though it was Catholic, interestingly, for about 50 years in the 13th century after the Fourth Crusade. So it has a very long and complex history, dating all the way back to 537 when it was, and even further in some sense, but 537 is when that structure was built during the rule of Justinian the Great. So of course we can go on and on about the details, but the point being that that as part of this current moment, it was determined that that there would be this intervention, and the historical logic that was used for that was quite the historical and legal logic that was used to authorize decisions quite interesting as well. I could talk more about that, but I'm already drifting into monologue form, as you can perhaps tell, and I want to be as dialogic as possible. So the main thing that, for those of you not terribly familiar with Istanbul, Turkey, the Eastern Mediterranean, or the politics of Hagia Sophia in particular need to know is that it's been a site and a sort of a canvas for the political desires of a variety of groups and movements over the years, and recently has indeed become targeted and from the perspective of Erdogan and his cadres, successfully reconverted into a mosque, sparking a lot of debate and discussion worldwide, which we can talk a lot more about if you like. But that said, my own work is really more about pluralizing our understanding of what Hagia Sophia might mean by examining it sort of as a sign, a polysemous sign, if you will, in a sort of field of meaning. And that shifts gears very quickly into a different sort of discussion, of course.
Yeah, and I know you have some images to share with us. I was wondering, before we shift to that and the more specific thoughts that you have about what's going on, do you want to just say how intellectually this your previous work feeds into this, or how you arrived at this project?
Absolutely. That's in some ways this makes perfect sense as a bridge, the privilege metaphor when it comes to matters of Turkey often, as a bridge between some of my earlier ethnographic work in Turkey and my newer project on the multiple strange sites of memory that embody these imperial pasts in the present across Southeast Europe, the Middle East. Increasingly also, my new project will involve aspects of the Romanov Empire as it continues to exist today, so also Central Asia and Eastern Europe. But earlier, when I was a graduate student in Chicago, and I should say that it's so wonderful to have this sort of homecoming, virtual homecoming, as it were, as well. Hopefully, there'll be a more physical homecoming in the near future too. But at that point, I was really more interested in sort of somewhat abstract questions of secularism, Islam as a political force, civil society, and what I came up against constantly while I was conducting research, primarily in 2005, 2006, 2007, for my dissertation, what became my first book, was the way in which the Ottoman Empire constantly emerged as a site for speculating about the political present in Turkey, for making arguments for or against certain, the more recent legacies and powers of secularism in the country. It was almost unavoidable. And to some extent, that was an effect of the sorts of institutions I was studying, which were broadly Sunni Muslim oriented non-governmental organizations, though I also did work with Alevi institutions, for whom the Alevis are the largest religious minority in Turkey, though not recognized as such. Kabir Tambar, another wonderful graduate from our department, of course, has done excellent work on this, among others. But for them, the Ottoman Empire was more of a sort of bête noire, a black beast that they wanted to leave in the past, and that's an interesting discussion as well. But The point being that the Ottoman Empire, and as a sort of object of politicized memory, was constantly something I found arising in conversation and something that I had to theorize more thoroughly myself. Then I began traveling for a variety of really sort of serendipitous reasons outside of Turkey, but in other former Ottoman contexts, and recognizing that those narratives and also sites of memory vis-a-vis the Ottoman Empire were powerful but differently articulated and uh, differently flavored, I suppose. One thing I've been looking into is food as a medium of memory. Incidentally, a lot to say about baklava and Turkish coffee, as those of you who've heard me talk before might know. But recognizing that the way that this was articulated and partitioned across, especially Balkan nation states, became fascinating. And so that led into all of these other projects, combining with the trajectory of my personal and professional life, and somehow that resulted in this interest in the way in which a variety of different sorts of sites, museums, houses of worship, cemeteries, public monuments, also ruins, how they embody these legacies and memories of the past empires. And again, to sort of loop back to our initial topic of conversation, Hagia Sophia is really just unavoidable when you're interested in these matters of the impact and the impact and the sort of pressure of the past on the present in Turkey, in Istanbul, and in the broader region.
Wonderful, that's perfect. Do you Are you ready to like share with us some of
I, I am
the
I am I
materiality of the
am
site?
I am ready to share a few slides, and maybe again wanting to be as concise as possible, even though I have a tendency to be the opposite of that. I'll try to just draw out some of the interesting points that I'm trying to raise with these slides as quickly as I can, and then maybe we can devote some more time to that in the discussion period. So let me just share my screen. This is always the awkward moment of our Zoom lives these days. And then I'll try to, let's see, there we are. How does that look to everyone? So as Shannon knows, but I'll let the rest of you know, I've recently been diving deep into the work of Susan Stewart, the wonderful literary critic and poet. I have her book right here, On Longing, which I've read in the past, but somehow it felt really quite pertinent to thinking through the different ways in which Hagia Sophia, as a sign in some sense, comes to exist beyond the site itself. And that's really what I'm trying to think through here. So her book On Longing, which I think is now almost 30 years old, but she talks about narratives. I mean, she is writing primarily about literature, but she has this taxonomy of the gigantic, the miniature, the souvenir, and the collection. And it occurred to me that it would be fascinating to think through Hagia Sophia vis-a-vis this sort of categorization that she provides. So in the first instance, thinking about its reconversion as a moment of monumentalization, trying to monumentalize this site and the Ottoman, and it is indeed a very explicitly Ottoman history that it's taken to embody on the part of the supporters of the reconversion. I don't know if you can see it here, but the more important image actually is not the image of Hagia Sophia itself, but that of Ali Erbash, the head of Turkey's Directorate of Religious Affairs, who gave the initial sermon or khutbeh on the 24th of July. It also happened to be the anniversary of the Treaty of Lausanne, which ironically, I would say, established the sort of regime for minority governance in both Turkey and Greece in 1924, as well as Eid al-Kabir, Eid al-Fitr, that is to say, the feast of the sacrifice in Islam. But he rose to this minbar, to this pulpit, with a sword in hand, and actively sort of called attention to recreating this Ottoman tradition of inaugurating mosques with a sword, mosques that were taken to be symbols of conquest. So thinking with Stewart along these lines, she writes that the monumental or the gigantic, it's of course an aesthetics of prostration. One is expected to prostrate oneself in relationship to that which is above, and prostrate oneself to the authority of the state and the history that it is taken to embody. And that's exactly what's going on here, I think, in some sense with Hagia Sophia. So I'm still thinking through a lot of this, of course, but I think this moment of monumentalization, gigantism in a way, is what's aimed at here in taking Hagia Sophia as a mosque again. And this is part of a broader monumental moment in Turkey. Erdogan and the AKP have initiated many gigantic infrastructure projects, both mosque projects and otherwise, that have put their seal and stamp on the city of Istanbul and Turkey at large, though Istanbul has really been a privileged site for this especially. You see here another one of these giant mosques, Çamlıca Mosque, on one of the highest hills on the Istanbul, or on the Asian side of Istanbul. It can host 64,000 worshippers, and yet it's up on a hill. It's hard to imagine 64,000 people actually wanting to come there to perform prayer. But of course, the point is that it's now a critical part of the silhouette of the city. There's more to say about the minarets in particular, but I'm going to leave that aside for the moment for the sake of time. I gave you also an image of one of the most sort of quixotic and crazy projects, this notion that there will be a second straight Istanbul canal. This is a rendering of how it might look on the map of Istanbul, though you can actually see some other big projects on that map as well, including the new airport, the third bridge over the Bosphorus. Now, as opposed to this monumentalism, I want to think through these other sort of semiotic and political categories that Stewart gives us as a way of sort of opening an imminent critique against the monumentalism of Hagia Sophia in the moment. So one thing that I've actually written about as far back as in my book is the miniaturization of not Hagia Sophia or Hagia Sophia specifically, but miniaturization of monuments in miniature parks, particularly Miniatürk in Istanbul. I've become sort of fascinated by the various different miniatures of Hagia Sophia that one can find across the world. So here you have images from Miniatürk, but also from the World Park in Beijing. I know there are other miniatures, particularly I found one in Windows of the World in Shenzhen. There are a couple more in Europe that I need to collect. But that brings us to the issue of collecting, because this is actually perhaps what's most interesting about these miniatures, how they are configured vis-a-vis other miniatures in a collection curated by these miniature parks. And again, I don't have, because I can't share my screen and also have the various quotes from Stewart that would be helpful available all together, particularly because none of the printing shops were open here today in Zagreb. I can't read you the quotes from Stewart that should go with this, but she writes about the collection as in some sense subordinating the past to the uses of the present, which is also true to some extent of monumentalization, but in a way that it becomes all about the sort of interior logic, the internal logic of what is collected together. And what's interesting about the miniature Hagia Sophias is that although they resemble each other quite a lot as miniatures, and of course the aesthetics of miniatures is another thing we can talk more about, as part of broader collections, they are inhabiting and articulating very different sort of logics of the past. So in one case, a glorious Turkish and broadly Turkish Ottoman, Turkish Seljuk past in Miniatürk. In the other case, a sort of deterritorialized and ahistorical World Heritage sort of image, and I'm thinking here of the work of, among others, Francois Hartog on the sort of regime of historicity, of presentism, which just brings all of, he's quite critical of heritage discourse in that respect, and I think for good reason often. So here you have, I mean, you can't see Hagia Sophia in this image of the world, but you have Neuschwanstein, some version of Neuschwanstein slash Disneyland as the kind of definitive monument there in the world in Beijing. And finally, Stewart does a lot with souvenirs, and of course there are a lot of souvenirs of Hagia Sophia as well. And this is again something I want to think through more, but just very briefly to think about two very contrasting souvenirs, and in this sense to move beyond some of the arguments that Stewart makes. On the one hand, you have a commemorative coin that was issued, a one Turkish lira, to to memorialize this moment of reconversion. Though you'll note, interestingly, that the dates 1453 to 2020 that you see here, 1453 was the initial conversion of the church into a mosque. 2020 is its reconversion. It entirely erases the period that it was a museum, of course. The name is also quite important, and I write a little bit about this in the essay I'm working on. Hagia Sophia I Kebir Jami Sherifi, really Ottomanizing, linguistically Ottomanizing the site, as opposed to Hagia Sophia Museum, which is what it would have been before. Now you have this rather elaborate phrase, which signals its status as an Islamic space, but also in some sense, even in the Turkish, sort of suggests a certain Ottomanism due to this E in particular, which is after the Hagia Sophia. Native speakers of Turkish can comment on this better than I can. But so this is a very, in some sense, a very dominant, you might say it's a dominant souvenir. It's also money, it's passing through your hands. The semiotics of that, of the coin are interesting to think about. But it's a miniature also in Stewart's sense, but it's really one that's emphasizing the original event, and this is something Stewart writes a lot about, the souvenir, referring back to that moment in the past that is the origin. In this case, two origins that are collapsed, 1453 and 2020. Now, I want to again develop this immanent critique through objects, and this is actually in a conversation with your work, Shannon, through a certain sort of profane illumination, a la Benjamin and a la patina. And so I've got this other souvenir that I really, it's totally serendipitous. I just found it literally 2 weeks ago here in Zagreb. I can show it to you. It's here. But I also have an image of it for you. There is a bit of a patina on this. In fact, it's you know, the story of how this came to exist in a flea market in Zagreb is one that we can only speculate about, but it's an album for photographs. I think I'll put some old postcards of Hagia Sophia in it myself and make it a little art project about different materialities of Hagia Sophia as a sort of sign and that suggests its sort of indexical relationship to unknown pasts in a way. But it merely is to sort of open up the point, I suppose, that the meanings that this site has involved over time have changed quite rapidly, even in the recent past, and we can't, in some sense, monumentalize them thoroughly. I haven't gone at all into the sort of question of what the site means, especially for Orthodox communities, and I realize that's a detriment of my brief presentation here, one that I'm going to work on in my essay that I'm currently laboring upon. But I'm going to leave it at that now. Hopefully these images have given you a little bit of a sense of some of the interests I have, and we can return to them, or I can stop the screen sharing as you like.
Okay, yeah, why don't you stop the screen and we'll go back to conversing face to face, such as it were. But where you stopped actually leads really well to one of my next question, which is, and part of this is just factual, like this move from a museum back to a mosque. I'm curious about the audience for that, and if this now makes it off limits for tourists. Does that now mean we don't do souvenirs? Does this have implications for how appropriate it will be considered to miniaturize it? Yeah.
This is a great question and one that I'll have to answer to some extent speculatively, though there are probably members of the audience who would be able to do so better than I can. The terms of the audience, this is something that we can be a bit clearer about, I think. One of the reasons that I've come to Hagia Sophia as a topic is that I've had the good fortune to assemble and edit a group of briefer essays for an upcoming special issue of the Journal of Ottoman and Turkish, the Journal of the Ottoman and Turkish Studies Association, which will be specifically in response to the reconversion last July, but then opening up a broader variety of historical and political questions. And so a couple of the authors that we've assembled there have made the very clear point that, you know, on an international stage, obviously there's a lot of concern, and rightly so, for the rendering of an Orthodox Christian site into yet again a Muslim site, a recapitulation of that initial conquest. But within the domestic context in Turkey, where the Orthodox Greek and to some extent also Syriac Orthodox communities are really quite small, it's a moment in the ongoing sort of dispute between Islamism and secularism, if you will, not deconstructing those too much for the moment. So that this was really taken to be a gesture against the sort of secularist dispensation that has guided modern Turkey since the end of the Ottoman Empire in 1924. I could go into some more detail here because the logic upon which the reconversion was based, there was a lawsuit brought by a very obscure civil society association, something I should be interested in since it was my previous topic of work, that basically held that because Fatih Mehmet Sultan, the conqueror of Istanbul, he provided an endowment, a vakıf, to provide for the upkeep of the space as a mosque, of Hagia Sophia as a mosque, for perpetuity. That's the logic of this endowment, and therefore this could not be revoked by anyone. And this was mentioned explicitly and actually set off quite a debate in the initial sermon at the mosque on the 24th of July last year. Ali Erbash, this head of the Directorate of Religious Affairs, said, you know, according to our religion, anyone who intervenes or disrupts the mandate of a vakf, of an endowment, will burn. And this was taken to be actually aimed at Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and there was a lot of controversy in the press over it. And he had to then sort of backtrack and say, no, I'm not talking about Ataturk. I was actually talking about anyone who does so in the future, which is really quite ridiculous, in fact. But so the point being that this really was an intervention within this sort of overheated public sphere that's determined by this dichotomy and binary of secularism and Islam. As far as the souvenir question goes, I'm not sure. You know, of course, there was a museum gift shop there, and yet at the same time, it's hard to imagine that will continue to exist in the same way. You used to have to exit through the gift shop, right? That's the phrase we use. But it wouldn't make sense in a mosque. One of the things, I mean, this Erbash in his sermon had to walk a very fine line because, of course, UNESCO was threatening to revoke its World Heritage status, and so he made the point that, you know, it's our duty as Muslims also to host this space because it's a legacy and it's also World Heritage. I think he even used a version of that phrase. But what that will mean in practice, tourists are still welcome, and he made the point that they're welcome in all Turkish mosques, which is true, broadly speaking, though, you know, it would be a different thing in the Blue Mosque in Istanbul and in a provincial mosque in rural Anatolia, as I can attest personally. But whether that will change, the gift shop is a very interesting question in that respect. I don't think that miniaturization will now be, you know, in some sense prohibited. In fact, as the coin suggests, they're just new I almost said lamentations, which would be a Freudian slip, laminations of a previous miniaturized logic. Postcards, of course, will continue to exist, and postcards are another topic that I'll be writing about vis-a-vis Hagia Sophia in particular, particularly because Stewart has a whole sort of interesting take on postcards as well. Not to say that Susan Stewart's the only way we can analyze this. It's just the route that I'm taking at the moment.
Um, that's great. I think. Could you say more about the politics of miniaturization versus monumentalization? I think the politics of monuments and empires. I mean, archaeologists, when we see monumental architecture, we read it as a sign of empire, and but it works differently in different empires for different audiences. So I'd be really curious to hear about your take on it and also the politics of miniaturization.
This is, of course, what I've been doing my best to think through as in as nuanced a way possible recently. I think I will now try to rely a bit on Stewart and give you a few quotes because I think that the contrast that she lays out is quite interesting. Though I'm going to preface that by saying that, what's interesting perhaps, and there's undoubtedly more to be said about this, is that certainly within Turkey and elsewhere as well, the politics of monumentalization and for that part miniaturization are actively pursued by groups and actors that we would consider on opposite sides of a political spectrum, right? So, particularly in Turkey, monumentalism and monumentalization really would be associated quite strongly with the Kemalist project as well, whether it be in Ataturk's monumental tomb in Ankara or the fact that every Turkish municipality of any size has a very monumental statue of Ataturk. So the fact that the AKP is taking this on as a political aesthetic is in some sense recapitulating the terms of the politics of the state in public space, the faces of the state, to invoke Yael Navarro-Yashin's wonderful phrase vis-a-vis Turkey. It may be the case that the Turkish state has been given an Islamist facelift, but the broad features are still quite the same. Now, that said, I do want to sort of point out how Stewart makes this distinction. Her analysis of the gigantic and the monumental, I mean, she's also dealing, of course, with narratives and talking about Gargantua and Pantagruel, and so there's a lot of other material there that I'm ignoring, Rabelaisian even. But she writes, and I think this will ring true as you say to archaeologists and others. In the representation of the gigantic within public space, it's important that the gigantic be situated above and over, that the transcendent position be denied the viewer. So there is that moment of submission to what is taken to be transcendent, and usually it's affiliated with state power in her reckoning. And I think that works well in this context, in any case. With and I guess one addendum to that is that this is also a sort of transcendent rendering of the history that the state is taken to embody. So in this case, and that's what makes this a new moment, the Turkish state, which is of course being led at this point by the AKP government, and Erdogan has reintegrated the Ottoman Empire as a very key component, if not the key component, of the history that the state is taken to represent, and that finds its expression in sites such as Hagia Sophia when it's reconverted. Now, with the miniature, what's interesting, of course, is that aesthetically and semiotically, it's the inverse and reverse of the monument. Rather than being enveloped by the transcendent monument, you envelope the souvenir or the miniature postcard. So she writes, for instance, sorry. The miniature offers a world clearly limited in space, but frozen and therefore both particularized and generalized in time. The transcendence presented by the miniature is a spatial transcendence, one in which you are not you are not submitted to a transcendent object, but you are the transcending subject vis-a-vis the miniature, right? So this opens up, she writes quite a lot about the sort of picturesque and the tableau, and it's going back to that sort of 18th and 19th century genealogy, which I know you're somewhat interested in as well. Not all of that is necessarily relevant uh, to Hagia Sophia specifically, but the point is that in that sort of aesthetic relationship in which one transcends rather than being transcended upon, I don't know if that's actually something you can say. There's a moment where you can sort of attribute a holistic a whole to this object and then manipulate it in various ways. So I'm not getting quite to the point I want to make, I sense, but maybe we should move on there. Because it might just be a bit too abstract for me to bring back to Hagia Sophia, though I'm still obviously sort of grappling with it as well. Um, there's this nostalgia. This is the point I think I wanted to make. There's this moment of nostalgia and sort of anteriority to the miniature, which is very different than the monumental nostalgia that you find in the sort of gigantic. So it's not quite along the lines of Boehm's distinction between restorative and reflective nostalgia, but I think you can see perhaps how monumental maps onto restorative nostalgia in a certain way, and reflective nostalgia might map on to the miniature. So maybe I'll just leave it there as a suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, what I was also thinking is that it's so appropriate for the miniature that it's been minted onto a coin because precisely this relationship, um, it is semiotic, but it's a token, right? So it's a token referring to a bundle of meanings that one must already have somehow, and that you can possess in a way that you're given possession over this bundle of meanings and a connection to a meaningful place that is monumental as well, right? Like it connects you personally to something monumental and significant. So that was one of the ways I was starting to think about it.
And that's actually that's really helpful, because in fact this is one of the points that Stewart makes about the miniature and the souvenir, is that it always requires a narrative beyond itself to achieve its full meaning. And here the narrative is already in some sense concretized. It's the narrative of reconquest, and you have then this piece of lucre, this coin that probably in everyday life, of course, you're going to be spending this on a variety of things, but at the same time, you can take this as a personalized relationship to that very hegemonic and monumental history and narrative, if you choose to do so.
Yeah, that's great. Well, there's already people wanting to get in line for the Q&A. So again, just to remind you, and I'm sorry we're a few minutes late, but I anticipated with this lovely topic and conversation to please do the raise hand function so that I see you in order and identify yourself in the chat to everybody if you can. But we already have a question from Nathan Young. Would you like to speak up, Nathan? I think you can unmute yourself now.
Okay, there we go.
There you go.
Hi, thanks. I'm Nathan Young. I did my work at Ohio State University, and I worked on nostalgia in Turkish villages, or rather how the lifeways associated with Turkish villages now form the imaginaries that we see so often in urban spaces as well. So my question is if there's an identifiable counter move by JHP secularists, perhaps to monumentalize Ataturk or some aspect of Kemalism. And I can think of maybe one example, maybe the İş Bankası Museum, that was this kind of historic branch that was recently reopened as a museum about maybe 2 years ago.
Thank you, Nathan. It's good to meet you, or meet you on the Zoom devu, as they say, or as I say, anyhow. And looking forward to our further conversations. I think this is a fantastic question that I may not be the most qualified person to comment on this point at this time, simply because my ability to spend much time in Turkey in recent years has been relatively compromised. But that said, of course, I do follow the headlines. What's always been interesting to me is the way in which, of course, Erdogan and the AKP, and this will not surprise anyone, always defer to Ataturk ultimately, and indeed, Erdogan has modeled himself on Ataturk in a variety of ways. There's also been the attempt to even recuperate Ataturk as a good Muslim. One thing that I'm interested in following at the moment, and again, this is now a bit more specific to the Turkish studies folk in the Zoom room, is the reconstruction of the Ataturk, the AKM, the Ataturk Cultural Center on Taksim Square in Istanbul, which of course was a major this was a major site of sort of Turkish modernism and Kemalism, the sort of articulation in public space of the Western European heritage in the form of opera and theater and that sort of thing, music, and then also a site of great resistance during the Gezi protests in 2013, when it was draped in a whole variety of banners. Then it was torn down. Now it's being rebuilt, right? How does this, and more generally, of course, Taksim Square, which I don't think I mentioned at all in my previous remarks, but is another key site within the broader sort of political symbolic topology of Istanbul as a whole. How the monumental space of Taksim has been reoriented by AKP projects, a space that was largely taken to be definitive of Turkish secularism. So that's one place I would look. But the monumental aspects of Kemalism haven't been entirely, with the exception of AKM perhaps, which is now rising again, and certain other things. On the whole, they've been preserved and reincorporated into the AK Party and Erdogan's dispensation, I would say, rather than entirely erased. Though, of course, that's not satisfactory to the CHP, to the Republican People's Party by any means. But they haven't just been, the statues haven't fallen, as it were.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Bisera Pencheva?
Jeremy, thank you very much for your presentation. And I also thank the organizers for the event, because I think it's very important focus and the discussion of Turkey to be on a continuous rotation so that we don't forget, because the most important thing is not to forget. And so, Jeremy, I would like to ask you, as an art historian, and I'm an art historian, my major research is on Hagia Sophia, and most specifically aesthetics and acoustics. Space like Hagia Sophia allows for transcendence, in which human voice becomes an emanation, in which light becomes a way to experience the divine. So I'm not going to focus on what I do. I want to turn to Jeremy. I was very affected by a book by Ece Temelkuran called Turkey, the Insane and the Melancholy, which is very much a Susan Stewart project of speaking about, as a journalist, about Turkey through a series of photographs and what it says about the country. And so what I would like to ask you is the interesting issue that she raises about change of alphabet and separation from Ottoman, and therefore creating a project of modern Turkey as being uprooting of a culture, and how dangerous such uprooted culture is so weak, and the manipulation of that memory is so weak. So my question is first about that, the role of language, the kind of the tenuous hold of deeper understanding of the past, and more specifically, we do both outside and inside Turkey to help build a more robust understanding of history, because that's where AKP is really manipulating, because it gives a very flattened understanding of history and it lures the masses. It's about education. So they had put a lot of attention in religious education. What can Turkey and outside Turkey do to create a more robust understanding of history?
Thank you, Bisera. Thank you for joining us. I should say that Bisera is one of the wonderful contributors to this group of essays that I've had the good fortune to edit, and that will be appearing hopefully soon in the Journal of Ottoman and Turkish Studies Association. And I've learned immensely from your work, most recently just last Thursday on Zoom. So I don't think I'm going to be able to provide a totally satisfactory and comprehensive answer to your question. I also had a little bit of trouble with the connection there for a moment, but I'm glad you raised Ece Temel Koran's work. For one reason, very practical reason, she actually lives in Zagreb now, and I've been meaning to reach out to her because I would really appreciate discussing our mutual commitments and interests more. But as you say, this uprooting and severing of the past from the present, which I mean, in some ways, this is, as many of you in the room know, this is a cliche in terms of its characterization of the relationship between the early Republic and an Ottoman period. And a lot of scholars have pointed out the various sort of modes of continuity that persisted despite that sharp cut in time. And yet it is also true that language reform is perhaps the most notable of those, but you could point to many different reforms in that 10 to 15 year period that all attempted to enact a very clear rupture with the past. And that creates a sense, and this is something that, for instance, anthropologists such as Özürek have written quite interestingly about as well, a sense of one's own sort of recent past, one's grandparents' language and culture as being entirely inaccessible in the present. And what's of course problematic about that is that past then becomes exoticized. There's a sort of internal Orientalism that goes on, and then it becomes this object that can be wielded for political purposes and projects of a variety of different sorts, whether it be repressed as the Kemalist project would have it, or alternately sort of reduced to a very simplistic and whitewashed version of the Ottoman Empire and celebrated as Erdogan and the AKP do. How to address this in scholarship, in public discourse, is of course a gigantic question, and it's one that I think, I'm thinking actually of your own argument and presentation on Thursday, pointing out continuities. So of course I won't be able to summarize all of your eloquent remarks here for our audience, but pointing out forms of continuity on a theological and aesthetic level vis-a-vis Hagia Sophia in this case, that might unite Christian and Muslim piety, and this being, of course, in your rendering, the sort of Neoplatonism that inspired both the architecture, the soundscape, and the sonic features of the building, as well as its forms of illumination, but then also plays out in different ways in Sufism. This is the sort of thing that I think is quite important because it resists. I don't think it's sufficient to return to secular universalism here. That it has, however much I personally might be committed to certain aspects of secular universalism, it clearly does not have the potential as a political project in Turkey nowadays to answer the questions that have been raised. And so therefore, I think other forms of continuity and, in some sense, heterotopic and heterochronic pasts that nonetheless can speak to people who have strong Muslim, in the Turkish context, strong Muslim political convictions in the present, really needs to be what's done. Now, how that occurs is a very difficult question to answer, and I sense I'm already skating on some thin ice, so I might stop there, but I'm sure that we'll return to these questions in conversations, if not today, then in the future. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. We have 2 more questions, which should be just about right for our timing. Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Shannon, and thank you, Jeremy, for this stimulating conversation today. Quick bit about myself. I'm a graduate student in Chicago, and I'm primarily focused in studying cultural materialism and material engagement. So my question relates to the actual material of these structures. So particularly if there's a conversion from a religious space to a secular space, and then again secular back to religion, is it as simple as changing the symbolism that is present inside the structure, or does it go beyond that? And then ultimately, what I'm curious about with that is how that might actually change the nature of the embodied affect of the space. Is there evidence to suggest that the majority of the experience, the heteroglossic sort of enchantment that it offers, arises from the architecture itself, or is it actually derived from that symbolism?
Thank you, Tim. This is really a question that Bisara, who just was with us, probably would be better to answer than me, but I'll try to ventriloquate some of her arguments and others. One of the major, so of course there's a certain specificity to Hagia Sophia here, and that in its initial transformation, well, not initial, but initial transformation in 1934-35 from mosque to museum, one thing that happened was that the carpets were removed. And this resulted in, as well as, I think, if I'm not mistaken, some other aspects. I was reading about this earlier, but I didn't read in great enough depth, clearly. But I think some parts of the floor were also excavated to reveal certain aspects of the Byzantine era decorations on the floor that wouldn't have been visible, for instance. Now the carpets have been reintroduced, and that has a massive effect on the acoustic aesthetics of the space, which of course now are primarily, as a mosque, it's now primarily host to the adzan, the edan, the azan, ezan, however one chooses to pronounce, the call to prayer, the various forms of incantation and intonation that would occur with communal prayer and to some extent in other times as well. So there is a phenomenological transformation that occurs in the reconversion to the mosque space. And the carpets are really, I think, the major issue here. And Bisara Pencheva has pointed out quite sharply how the aesthetic possibilities that are present in the space as it was designed as a church and in relationship to Byzantine devotional chant, they can't be replicated if you have the carpets there, right? There are other aspects of this. The question of the gift shop is an interesting one. I'm not entirely sure what other interventions have been made recently, but there certainly are interventions that shape one's experience of the space beyond simply the narrative that the space now is a different sort of space, no longer a museum, but a mosque. The issue of museum and mosque and the possibility of them, of a museum and a mosque, and for that matter, a church coexisting in the same space, whether it be at the same time or perhaps even at different times during the week, this is something that people have, scholars and others have speculated on, and it's a quite interesting question, I think, the notion that perhaps you could have it as a mosque on Fridays, a church on Sundays, and a museum on other days, and then perhaps, of course, on special holidays of Christian or Muslim Muslim holidays, you could perhaps reopen it then as well. Would require, of course, very careful coordination of some of these aesthetic issues, but it would also require, I think, beyond that, an interesting flexibility on the part of visitors. One of the essays that will be coming out in this volume that I now at this point I'm advertising for in the Journal for Ottoman and Turkish Studies Association points out that when you have religious objects in museum spaces, you often have unanticipated moments of interaction between the visitor as a devotee and the object. So a famous case of this was certain, I believe it was in Athens several decades ago, certain women putting oil on an icon that was exhibited in a museum space, and so there are questions of this sort as well. What would it mean for a space to be multiply defined in that way? Would it simply be contradictory? Would there be flexibility? Unfortunately, it's not on the political agenda now in any event, but it's a question that I'm quite fascinated by. So thank you.
Anush Suni?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for this excellent talk, and thank you to the organizers for this event. So I'm an anthropologist, as you know, Jeremy, and I'm currently a postdoc at Northwestern University near Chicago. I work on the effects of state violence against Armenian and Kurdish communities in southeastern Turkey, with a focus on the effects of these histories of violence on the material landscape. So this topic is so just up my alley. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, Jeremy, on the example of Hagia Sophia in comparison to other monumental churches that have or have not been restored, and into what form. And I'm thinking, as you might guess, specifically of the Church of Ahtamar in Van, which is a medieval Armenian church that was restored as a museum, and also the Armenian cathedral in the medieval city of Ani that was later a Seljuk mosque and recently became a point of contention when a nationalist group performed prayers there as kind of a media stunt. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on the various afterlives of these or other such similar spaces and how they might be monumentalized or miniaturized. Thank you.
Thank you, Anush. It's always wonderful to see you and hear you. And you give me the opportunity to talk about a few things that I wasn't able to touch upon in the initial remarks, which is always welcome. Hopefully, I'll also at least partially address your question. I was thinking about Ani quite a lot because one of the various interesting sort of facts from the history of Hagia Sophia is that the architect of Ani, Tırdat, was also responsible for repairs to Hagia Sophia following the earthquake of 989, I believe it was. So there have been these various moments of earthquakes and other forms of damage that have affected the church, and of course, whether it be the Fossati brothers in the 19th century, sort of restoring the mosaics, or Tırdat in the 10th century. It's interesting to think about these moments of the different principles of reparation over time. That's an entirely different topic, but it's also important to point out that Hagia Sophia is not the only, and of course you know this, and many of you know this, but for those of you who are less familiar with contemporary Turkish politics, Hagia Sophia is not the only museum that has been reconverted into a mosque that was once a church. The Kora Church, or Kariye Cami as it's known in Turkish, in Istanbul, was in August of last year after Hagia Sophia also reconverted, as well as the Hagia Sophia in Trabzon, rather than Trabzon being the city on the eastern Black Sea coast. Incidentally, site of many interesting history. I won't go into the details there. But Akdamar and Ani in particular, indeed, as far as monumentalization and miniaturization vis-a-vis these two sites are concerned, I don't unfortunately have much to say other than that, particularly with Akdamar, there was an earlier moment, perhaps you remember this, Anush, where the Devlet Bahçeli, the head of the Nationalist People's Party, performed a prayer. This was prior to, I think, its reopening as a museum. I'm not sure about this. This was probably in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Performed a Friday prayer, led a Friday prayer in Akdamar as a sort of act of provocation. This was also in the aftermath, I think, of the tragic assassination of Hrant Dink. So there's, of course, a more specific story about right-wing Turkish fascist nationalism, frankly, and the question of the Armenian genocide and so forth that I won't go into. But what's perhaps provocative in relationship to Hagia Sophia is the way in which these sites are taken to, precisely because they embody these histories that are troublesome to the Turkish, the sort of monologic Turkish nationalist narrative. They become recruited by nationalists as places that require intervention in some sense. And I see in the comments that Nagihan Haliloğlu has written that Akdamar is now open to prayer once a year now, supposedly. Open to prayer on the part of Christians or Muslims, I guess one might say. I assume Christians. There, it's interesting to note. But this is, this is a phenomenon, yeah, for Christians, uh, uh, not Devlet Bachali, thankfully. Let's hope. But this is something that, of course, is not merely a sort of Turkish question. The way in which these sites, which become iconic of the aporias or moments in the past that trouble nationalist discourses, are recruited to nationalist discourse, right? So, in some sense, these are symptoms of a sites that are symptomatic of the inconsistencies in nationalism have to constantly be attended to, right? And that has a monumentalizing logic to it. So I think that's where I'll stop with that. But there's obviously a lot more to be said about it. And nice to see you as ever, Anush.
Okay, and we're going a little over time for those who have freedom of schedule, but we're going to take our last question from Gökçe Beyinli. Trying your name. I hope I got it close
Yes,
enough.
yes. Hello, Gökçen Beyinli. That was
Hello, hello.
all right. Thanks. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, all. Thanks for this fascinating talk. I did my PhD on shrines in Istanbul in majority, and shrines all over Turkey at Humboldt University. So when we are talking about Hagia Sophia, we are talking always with terms like museum, church, mosque, right? Normative definitions. But I was, especially this dichotomization between museum and mosque that connotes to this secular religious divide in Turkey, I think it's very decisive. But it was, Hagia Sophia has always been also a shrine, and I'm using shrine, the term shrine here, in the sense that it constitutes a place that people attribute specific or sacred meanings. So how would you comment on this forgetting of this shrine aspect of Hagia Sophia? And does it have, according to your symbolic or political significance today with regards to the discussions circulating around Hagia Sophia? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gekchen. This is a really challenging and productive question. I fully take your point that the very categories through which we describe the space, particularly the museum mosque dichotomy, run into the problem of reinscribing the already overheated binary logic of the political sphere in Turkey, and for that matter, sort of really quite simply registering and, in some sense, obscuring a history of debates over what the space can and should be. As far as the shrine aspect of it, on one level, this is, of course, an ethnographic question that I don't have the capacity to address, because one would really, I think, want to speak to a variety of different people who come to Hagia Sophia, who inhabit it in different ways. Surely that has shifted now in some respects since July of last year, and yet one would expect that there, simply because it's now become a mosque doesn't mean that there are a multiplicity of different relationships, both aesthetic and ethical, religious, that people might inhabit in the space. Now, I'm not sure if I fully comprehend. You've defined shrine nicely for us, but I'm not sure I fully comprehend moments in Hagia Sophia's particular past where that sort of conceptualization illuminates it in ways that would be productive. So I'd want to look into that more. I'm just thinking, one of the things that this question makes me think about is the way in which certain aspects of the space itself become central when we talk about it in these sorts of conversations. One thing that one doesn't talk about so much are the Imperial Tombs that surround it, for instance, which are shrines of a different sort, I suppose you might say. But obviously, they're accretions upon the Byzantine era structure, as one might say, are the minarets. And so you can think of the physical aspect of the site as a palimpsest of different interventions, also the restorations that I mentioned briefly in response to Anush. I'm also now, in a very different way, thinking about certain interventions that have been made into the space in interesting ways. Perhaps you and others have heard about this in 2019, a model who posed nude in Hagia Sophia. Sort of, what does that tell us about the sort of semiotics and politics of the space? I don't know that I have an answer to it. But certainly that would have a different provocation now than it did even just a few years ago. So I fear that I'm of course now blathering on. Bisera points out, of course, as well that as a mosque, there's now a new form of gender segregation, which is that's one of those things that requires mention, even though it often doesn't go mentioned by those of us who think about these things because we just sort of naturalize it. But that's also true. So I don't know if I've actually addressed your question directly, but hopefully I've...
Thanks for your comments. I mean, thank you.
A conversation to continue, perhaps.
Yes, definitely. I would be very interested in doing so. Thank you.
Well, and lovely. I hope that we will continue to have conversations in this space. The question of shrine was also occurring to me, and circling back to the question about tourism, because some people have argued that there's a pretty fine line when you look at things just phenomenologically, behaviorally, between tourism to heritage sites and religious shrine pilgrimage. And I think and who gets to circulate, whether it's women, non-Muslims, etc., through this space. It seems like something to watch in the long life of one of the most, it must be one of the oldest, most consistently used buildings in the world. It must be up there.
That's a question I should probably have the answer to at the tip of my tongue, but I don't. When it was famously, perhaps apocryphally, when Justinian first witnessed it upon entering in 537, he said, "Solomon, I have surpassed you." So that's sort of, even at that point, there were, of course, older. Of course, Solomon's temple doesn't exist any longer,
right?
But but there were precedents that were being invoked even at that point. If I could just make one addendum, because Shannon, what you said reminded me of something that I might have said to Gökçen's question, which is this issue of sort of shrine practice, particularly in relationship to tourism, is something that various friends and colleagues sort of in my ambit are working on quite productively in regard to Mevlana's, that is to say, Rumi's tomb in Konya. One of the members of our Empires of Memory project, Çiçek İlengiz, is now doing research on this to the degree that she can in the context of COVID, and the various meanings of love that come to inhabit that site, both on the part of a variety of different types of Muslims and New Age practitioners and tourists as well. And then, in a different respect, the tomb complex and mosque of Eyüp Sultan in Istanbul is a place where shrine practices of a more, in a less sort of conceptual and a more sort of colloquial sense, continue to, and because it is a matter of tomb visitation there in a way that doesn't happen to the same degree at all in Hagia Sophia, is an interesting site for the provocation of sensitivities over proper conduct, both vis-a-vis what might be sort of secular citizenship, but also vis-a-vis what might be considered to be sort of debates internal to Islam over the propriety of tomb visitation and the appeal to saints' interventions in the first instance. I also am seeing that the chat is continuing on its own in interesting ways. The Pantheon in Rome is being nominated as perhaps one of the
oldest continually used place. I did immediately think.
May I make only a short comment?
Mhm.
You know, with the law of 677 in Turkey in 1925, all the shrines were changed, transformed into museums. So legally, actually, in Turkey, all shrines are museums. Still,
Right.
this law, of course, so that brings another aspect to this discussion, I think. Thank you.
Which is, of course, particularly vivid in the tomb of Mevlana of Rumi in Konya, also at Hacı Bektaş, and something I actually write about in my book in Cappadocia. I would also recommend highly Zeynep Kezer's work on the early ethnographic museums in Ankara in particular, but in the Republic of Turkey, that sought to put a lot of the devotional objects from not tombs, but in this case, the Sufi lodges behind glass and thereby domesticate them in certain ways. So these are all, now we have more Gabriel and Derul Zafaran Midyat. Too much is going on here in the chat. But I'm glad that, thank you all for your contributions and conversation.
And thank you, Jeremy. This was really lovely. And everyone, please give Jeremy a applause and thank you for this lovely chat. And thank you to all of our staff, Wei, Anna, Carlo, and our captioner, whose name Sabrina. Thank you. Thank you all, and hopefully I'll see you at the end of the month for our next one, and I'll catch up with you, Jeremy. Thank you so much.
A profane archaeology of Bowie in London sounds fantastic to me. So I'll try to
join us. Well, and for your hour, you can have a glass of wine with that one.
Hopefully.
Or beer, whatever his preferred drink is. I'm not sure what his preferred drink was.
Well, I should say Rakia for those.
Yeah. There we go.
Be
Goodbye,
well, all.
everyone. Be well.